system. And coming up in just 60 seconds, our NewsNet meteorologists have their eye on the heat.
Annually, the move has been met with backlash. Both writers and actors are on the picket line right now as both groups demand protection from AI, which they say could erode their work. The Security Exchange Commission making moves this morning. The SEC just put in place new guidelines for companies. Will now require organizations to report if they were victim to a cyber attack within 4 days of the event. More than 500 different companies as well as organizations were victims of cyber attacks in recent months. MasterCard at odds with the cannabis industry this morning. The company has asked dispensaries not to accept their debit cards for payment. The move is in line with most other large consumer banks. The move is a major blow to the industry, which is gaining legal momentum.
I guess you got to get cash.
A number of states legalized the substance for medicinal and recreational use. It is still illegal, though, on the federal level. In New York, I'm Eddie Hirschfeld reporting.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was making calls for the island country to stop capital punishment for drug-related crimes. The woman killed for drug trafficking is the second hanging this week for such crimes. Road. According to state media, people were brought in from around the country to the country's capital in order to fill the crowd. Singapore is conducting its first execution in 19 years, despite calls for the island country to stop capital punishment for drug-related crimes. The woman killed for drug trafficking is the second hanging this week for such crimes. Singapore's laws mandate that the death penalty for anyone convicted of trafficking more than 500 grams of cannabis and 15 grams of heroin. A human rights group is urging to stop executions for these offenses, saying that there's increasing evidence that the punishment isn't turning people away from the crimes. And activists say that another execution is set for next week. Since resuming hangings in 2022, Singapore has executed 15 people for drug offenses, an average of one person a month.
Spain and South Africa are set for the film to premiere. This becomes as no surprise as the movie is a sleeper hit of the summer. At the U.S. box office, the groundbreaking film crossed the $100 million mark last week, and that was just short of 2 weeks since its initial release.
You know, we were supposed to change things, weren't we?
Jennifer Aniston and Reese.
NewsNet's Midday Edition starts now with 13 minutes of uninterrupted news. Thanks for tuning in to NewsNet's Midday Edition. I'm Madison Schlegel, and today is Friday, July 28th. Heading right into our top story this hour. Wild weather continues to make headlines across the country. Nearly 200 million people, or 60% of the U.S. population, are under heat advisory or flood warning or watches as high temperatures spread and new areas are being told to expect severe storms. The National Weather Service said a dangerous heat wave began to scorch the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic on Thursday and will continue into this weekend. Meanwhile, the record-string-breaking temperatures will persist for the Southwest and the Midwest. The predictions for continued excessive heat come a day after the World Meteorological Health Organization declared July 2023 as the hottest month on record. NewsNet's chief meteorologist, Morris Langworthy, now is here with us with more on the wrath of Mother Nature. Morris.
And thank you, Madison. 34 states are under those heat alerts, including heat advisories and excessive heat warnings. And that's where we see the heat index getting over 105 degrees for multiple days. Now, I have some good news. Some of us are going to start seeing relief from the heat as we go through this weekend. Even areas like Phoenix, Arizona, we're not going to be seeing temperatures over 110 degrees moving into the weekend. We'll actually see into Sunday afternoon just 108 degrees. Also looking at Philadelphia, we're going to get away from the triple-digit numbers this weekend. Some nighttime temperatures back below 75 and daytime highs towards Sunday afternoon, 90, 91 degrees, so not too bad. But remember, all the precautions we've been taking during this heat wave don't end when the heat does. We still need to stay hydrated, and we still need to check that back seat before locking up the car.
Thanks, Morris. The Senate is in a stalemate over promotions for hundreds of top U.S. military officials, and at the center of the standoff is Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville. The Republican is getting criticized by both parties, but he says that he's not backing down. Congress is approaching its August recess, and there's a chance that lawmakers will be out of Washington, D.C. before resolving an ongoing hold on military nominations. Those nominations on pause because of the Republican senator and former college football coach who's against the Pentagon's policy of reimbursing military service members and their families to travel for abortion care. On Thursday night, the Senate passing a bipartisan National Defense Authorization Act, with Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying that the Tuberville situation is up to Republican leadership.
As I said, the responsibility is on Senator McConnell, Senator Thune, and the Republican caucus to dissuade Tuberville from doing this thing which is hurting our national security in a very real way, and every week it gets worse.
Active duty military spouses delivered a petition to the Senate and Tuberville on Monday. It's signed by hundreds of military family members who say they are, quote, deeply concerned and personally impacted by Senator Tuberville blocking confirmation of senior military leaders. And military shortages are creating some serious challenges for the Pentagon, too. Recruiters for all branches of the services say that they're now forced to draw from a shrinking pool of candidates. That's because the percentage of Americans ages 19 through 25 is at a 15-year low. Adding to that problem, low employment and more job opportunities for young people. According to the Pentagon, fewer than a quarter of Americans ages 17 to 24 even qualify for the service. That's because of poor test scores, criminal records, and physical and mental fitness issues. And less than 10% of possible candidates say that they would even consider joining the service. And the military is seeing even more changes, with President Biden taking a closer look into the military's code of justice. Victim's commander to decide if the assault claims should be taken seriously. The Biden administration says that this order will be the most sweeping change to the military legal code since it was created in 1950. President Biden also plans to visit Maine today. On his visit, he's expected to sign another new executive order encouraging new inventions to be made here in the U.S. This is the first time in his presidency that he's visiting the state. The president will speak at a textile factory before heading to a fundraiser in Freeport. The aim of his trip is to see more manufacturing happen here on home ground. The executive order will help create more jobs across the country and transparency about new manufacturing development programs. The order is also
don't want to
pushing
work.
federal agencies to consider domestic production.
Right. Well, you have to remember that more than 40% of all illegal aliens crossing our southern border are from countries other than Mexico or Central America. The entire world is on their way here. Everybody has heard the siren call of our open borders and our policies that are letting pretty much everybody in. Just a month or so ago, I was in Matamoros in Mexico, and my entire hotel was filled with Kyrgyzstanis and Dagestanis. Everybody's coming, and so it's inevitable that some of them are going to be known to our intelligence agencies as potential terrorists, and that's who's coming.
And now you testified before the House this week and said that the increase in illegal immigration is transforming American society and that children are being affected the most. Could you expand on that?
We rarely hear about the fact that most of the people that are coming across are in family groups or unaccompanied minors, and they have to go to school in the United States, and now they have to take standardized tests, overcrowding, the purchase of portable classrooms, security issues, gang problems, and these are starting to hit Americans. It's a pocketbook issue, it's a public safety issue, and it's a quality of education issue throughout the interior of the United States. So I just wanted to get that on the record in the Congress.
Absolutely. And you also brought up mass asylum fraud at the border and other legal loopholes that people are using to get into the country. You spent a lot of time down at the border. Could you tell us what you've seen in that sense? Right.
Well, to get asylum, to qualify for asylum in this country, you have to be able to show that you have been politically persecuted by the government of your home country. But the vast majority of people coming across are by indication from my interviews with thousands of them are economic migrants are coming here to work. They're not fleeing something. They're just coming to and for something in the United States. That's not an eligible grounds for asylum. And a lot of the immigrants that I talk to are very well aware that they have to come up with some kind of story, and they all know that nobody's going to check it. It's not checkable. But when you catch them down there before they've been lawyered up, as I do, they'll just tell you, I can make $30 a month in Colombia doing my job, but in the U.S. I'll make $150. So, why wouldn't I do that? That is not asylum. That is something entirely different. If they're going to claim asylum, and they're going to be lying about it.
Right. Now, you said in the same hearing that 100% of crimes committed by illegal immigrants are avoidable, which I thought was very interesting. But that's in response to some studies that show that illegal immigrants commit fewer crimes than American citizens. Could you speak to that?
That's right. I took heat for that, but I'm happy to do it. I'm just saying every crime by an illegal immigrant is a crime that was unnecessary, that was preventable. And you can't say the same thing for American citizen crime, at least not in the context of an apparatus that's deporting, that could deport them.
Okay, now one argument that was brought up is that it's
they're
not
being
possible to
stopped
stop
from
illegal
doing
immigrants
so.
from crossing our borders. But you've said that it is, and that illegal immigrants actually pay close attention to the decisions that our government's making on the border. What kinds of policies can be put in place to prevent the influx, do you think?
Well, we saw definitive evidence during the Trump administration, during the Trump years, that policies do play a critical factor in the decision-making processes of immigrants while they're still home. Will the money that I pay get me into the country and get me in to stay? If the answer is no, I'm not dropping the cash. I'm not spending that money on smugglers. I'm staying home. And they did. In huge numbers, the administration of Trump had about 20 or 30,000 apprehensions a month. The very next month, after Biden took office, it got rid of those policies, remain in Mexico, Title 42. They opened up all kinds of exemptions. The numbers went to 200,000 a month and never looked back. All-time records, every record in the book's broken because the immigrants are smart. They pay attention to policy, and they